Kelly here, and I am back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today's video is featuring some older products. This is the mini messages stamps, and then the banners, the wood grain 3D embossing folder, tailgate alphabet. I pulled out this set, which I think it's called It's Still You, It's Always You. It's a cute one. And because today we are making my husband's anniversary card. And so we did have plans to go out of town, of which he knew nothing about. But because it's our 5th wedding anniversary, the modern is silverware. We'll talk about that later, but the traditional is wood. And so I thought it would be super cute to create a card where it looked like our initials were like carved into the wood. I thought that would be super cute. It does get a little challenging to stay on trend with the anniversary card making and still making it so it's not like super over the top feminine. So I thought this was a good mix. So here what I'm doing is I am laying everything out to make sure it's going to fit in the size heart that I have chosen. Obviously our last name is Taylor, but actually this would work for me either way because my maiden name also started with a T. So this does not have a plus sign, so I'm going to use the I in the tailgate set to create my own plus sign. So my original idea, because you guys know I'm always experimenting. That's how we figure out how things work or don't work. So my original idea was, okay, I'm going to cut a bunch of these out of white cardstock. I'm going to stack them up together, and then I'm going to put them into my embossing folder. And then that way it'll emboss the wood around it, but it would press, because we had so many layers of cardstock together, it would press this into the wood so it would look like it was carved in, which did work. And we'll see here shortly. So one thing to note, the stacking hearts that I'm using, I wanted to be able to, like I said, stack, 4 of them together. So I did make sure that when I taped my hearts down to the paper, I didn't just tape them to the paper, I taped the dies to each other. So that way, every time that I needed to cut a new one, I could pick them up as one piece and then move them, to the next area of cardstock to die cut them. And that was to make sure that they would always be the same, like, gap apart on the top and the bottom, and they would lay nicely together. So I did do 4, but full disclosure, the top layer I actually cut out of watercolor paper, so that way it would be a little bit thicker and it would take the embossing really nicely, because watercolor paper is a little bit thicker, just like with a press plate, like the Better Press system. That paper that they recommend is watercolor paper because it presses really nicely. So trick if you're using embossing and you want to get a nice deep impression. So here I'm just adding glue to each one of my letters, 3 out of the 4 of them, and then I'm stacking them together. So sometimes this worked well, like gluing all of them at the same time and then kind of putting them together and stacking them. Sometimes it did not, because they're just a little bit smaller. So, you'll just have to, if you're going to do like where you put the glue on all of them and then like slide them in together, make sure you're using a lot of glue, like a generous amount of glue. Otherwise, I would just glue them one at a time with the tweezers. So here, this I'm going to snip in half. I do also just want full transparency. My plus sign is not perfect, but it does do the job of what I need it to do. So I cut them in half and then I glued them together to create a plus sign. But I don't want I don't want to keep adding to that middle. So instead of continually layering them on, what I'm doing is I'm layering it on the vertical section. So that's one full piece. But then when I'm doing the sides, I'm adding glue to the sides, and then I'm just butting it up against that middle piece, and then I'm trimming off the excess. And this is going to allow me to have that area where they're flush with each other because I'm not constantly stacking one on top of the other in the middle. This one is just like a little bit more involved than stacking the other ones, but as you can tell from watching this, it really did not take that long. I wouldn't say it would take any longer than gluing the letters individually. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, so that was my original, well, one of the ideas that I had, and it did not work. Don't do it. Spellbinders has stamp and cut 3D embossing images where you put the die actually in the folder, and I was like, oh, I wonder if that would work. It does work, but it also cuts into the plate underneath, so don't do it. I thought maybe it wouldn't cut all the way through because the sandwich is different. Nope, it does cut all the way through. Don't do it. I did check the one that it was not this one that I tried it with. I tried it with one that was retired. I did try using it after the fact, and you cannot tell that I cut into it. So no big deal there, but save yourself from from experimenting with the same thing because it doesn't work. All right, so now we have the wood grain 3D embossing folder, and now I did not emboss it beforehand. This is like one of those lessons that say, do as I say, not do as I do, and I'm just sharing with you the things that I learned. So the first time, I did not emboss the background first. This is all just unembossed white cardstock. The ones that we have, glued together, those are there in the middle. I'm going to tape it shut so nothing moves around. I didn't tape the letters because I was nervous that it would emboss, like it would imprint that in there. And so this did work. See, you can see how it embossed down into the paper. But the problem is the heart, because it's all the way around the perimeter, did not allow any of the wood grain to be embossed in the middle. So it worked, but it didn't. Now, you could absolutely try it by embossing it first and then going back in, putting your things in and running it through again. That probably would work. But I was working on crunch time because we were going out of town. So I ran it through without the embossed things to get all of the pattern. And then I put my pieces back in, lined them up where they were debossed. Here's the problem. I didn't line them up perfectly, which is understandable. It's hard to do when it's already got a pattern. So it did end up changing the way that I did it, the way that I did my card, but I'm still happy with the way that it came out. So these are just things that if you want to try, like this would be really cute for like your own anniversary card or like an engagement card, like a congratulations or a wedding card. I think this would be really cute for, it's just cute, like the little, I don't even know if people do that anymore. It was big when we were younger, carving your initials into a tree with your little boyfriend or little girlfriend. It was cute. I still think it's cute. I like the way the card came out. So here, now I am adding my color. And you can see when I'm adding the color, you can still see that debossing. And like I said, if I had done the 3D embossing folder first and then put in those stacked pieces of cardstock to force them into the background, I do think that would have worked. This also worked, just in a different way. So I went in and put in my lightest color, which was antique linen, and then I followed up with brushed corduroy. I think I used ground espresso, maybe gathered twigs. We'll see. We'll see here together in just a second. But because I am using the brushes, I am covering all of the all of the cardstock. Those bristles are very easily going to reach down into the debossed areas. If you did it like this and you did not want to use the die cuts at all, except for just doing the debossing, I would recommend doing, your lighter colors out, with the brushes, and then using the brayer to go over top with your darker color. That would help, though, the part that's debossed kind of pop. So I would maybe do the antique linen and the brushed corduroy as like my base, and then I would brayer the darker colors over top so it would look like it was sat inside the wood. I went a different way because in looking at some of the pictures, it did, like, obviously when it's freshly carved, it's really like that natural white of the inside of the tree. But when the tree heals over itself, the bark actually gets a little bit darker and it is raised. So that is the part that I went for once my original game plan did not work. So here what I'm doing is, before I'm doing any of the die cuts, I'm going in and I'm putting in a little drop shadow. This is going to help it stand up, like, so it looks like the bark has overgrown and healed itself. Obviously, by the way, the year is that's the year we got married. It's our initials and the year we got married. If you didn't want to put the year, like if it was just like a engagement card or congratulations card or whatever, you could maybe just do another little heart there. So I went in and I did what we call a cast shadow. So I put my shadows down and to the left, and I did that with a medium brown marker just to kind of like check everything out. Now I'm going to go in with the same colors that I used before, because this tree isn't magically changing colors, right? So I went in with the antique linen first, and then I went through, I did the heart, and then I did all of the letters. You could also, if you didn't want to ink blend, you could color these with markers. The ink blending just allows for that texture to show through a little bit more, whereas a marker like soaks into the paper no matter what the texture is. So I did the antique linen, and then I added a little bit of brush corduroy, and that's all I did with those ones. Now I'm kind of setting them back in there to see, if I like the way that they are looking, which I do like the way that they look, but I realized that the shadow probably needed to be a little bit more prominent. Plus, the way that we added the color, like where it's around the perimeter, helps the eye to be drawn to the center focal point. So that's good. So by adding just a little bit more shadow, we're going to help that pop. So here I wanted there to be some color. This is very brown, right? It's very brown. And so I decided to trim off just 1/8 of an inch on one side. And then because I trimmed that off, I lost the little bit of that halo effect I was just talking about. So I did go back in with some darker colors in order to get that on there. And then I am going to adhere this to a piece of, I think it's cranberry. I'm not 100% positive. I will double check and link it below. But anyway, so I did this so that way we have just like 1/16 of an inch of that red on either side. So we have our little tree, and then we have the red on either side. It's because my accessories, my supporting actors, are also going to be red. I knew I wanted to do little red hearts. And so that's just going to help bring a little bit of color into this very, very neutral toned card. And then once I have that done, I am going to adhere the other ones. So, you guys know that I have terrible travel anxiety, and thankfully, I have found a doctor who, works with me with that, and with some medication, I am able to travel fairly well now. It does mean I can't travel alone, but it's okay. I was going with my wonderful husband, and so we decided that we were going to go away for the weekend, and he brought it up to me. He was like, I had already booked it in March, by the way. But he brought it up to me and he was like, hey, listen, I'd really like to plan something for our anniversary, but with your travel anxiety, like I'm pretty apprehensive to do it. So I would like for us to sit down and find somewhere to go together. And I was like, I love you for being super conscientious about that. But I actually already booked something and arranged for your mom to watch the kids. Thank you, Grandma T. And so it was we went to Mount Vernon, Ohio, which is like the cutest, quaintest little town. When we parked the truck on Thursday, we did not get into the truck again until Sunday when we were leaving. Everything was within walking distance. It was totally adorable. It had all these little shops, great restaurants. It was a lot of fun. And then in addition, they also, that's how I ended up picking it, they have like a romantic adventures getaway, which is, made for couples. Super cute, super fun. It's like, I won't go into too much detail about it, but it is like an escape room for you and your significant other, where you have to like solve the mysteries, but it's geared towards couples. So it has like massage chairs and really relaxing things. And it was wonderful. He did not know what was happening at all. And from like the moment that we stepped into, like it has a number lock for the door, so you put in the code that they text you, and then from the moment that you walk in, like you're on. You have to figure out the clue to even get into the rest of the room. So it was a super good time. Totally fun. We went to a restaurant called the Alcove for dinner, and everything, like food was wonderful, service was wonderful, had the best chocolate cake. Like the frosting was like fudge, but not thick like fudge, but I mean, it was really, really good. So 10 out of 10 would recommend. It was, if you're looking for just like a cute little weekend getaway in the Ohio area, it was a lot of fun. So then you guys know my birthday was last week, and my dad is directly a week after me. So I had messaged my sisters to be like, hey, what's the game plan? What are we doing? And then, so we came home on Sunday, and then we ended up going over to, my dad's, football was on. So he wasn't going anywhere. But we just had like super low key, like sloppy joes for dinner. I picked up, while we were in Mount Vernon at one of the local grocery stores, I picked up a little cherry pull apart thing. And it was good. It was just good to see everybody. It was a great weekend. So here, I felt like it needed something a little bit more to make it like special. So here's where I get out my brayer. Now, for the most part, it's only going to hit these top parts that are raised. So you can see I'm kind of like moving around the card to try to get this ground espresso like onto the background. You definitely could do that first if you knew you were doing it. And so that did help a lot to make it feel a little bit more woodsy. But then I wanted it to feel like special, like extra. It's our 5-year wedding anniversary. And so I went in with the gold pigment ink from Honeybee, and I brayered that on, really just over the raised areas. I dumped on some gold embossing powder. I didn't try to be too particular about it. Like I went in with my brush. I felt like there was too much gold, like adhering to my letters. So I brushed off some off the background, not all of it. I wanted there to be some, in the background. And then I used the brush to brush off some off of the letters. I wanted it to be a little bit more sporadic. And then while I was doing that, I always preheat my heat gun. So I brought that to the paper, and you get that lovely, metallic gold. I know there's not gold trees. And my father told me my whole life, money doesn't grow on trees. So I know there's no gold trees. My daddy told me so. But I did think it added a little bit more to make it a little bit, like more special, So I heat set that, and then from there I started working on kind of building up the little accessory part. So I did end up using the mini messages. If you don't have that, highly recommend. They're like smaller messages. But they cover the gamut. There is something for everything in there. And when you're putting a design together and you're just like, oh, I don't want my sentiment to overwhelm, these are perfect for that. So I went with the happy anniversary, and I used that same darker red cardstock, treated it with my anti-static tool, stamped it in our brilliant white pigment ink, and then heat set that with a white detail embossing powder. I also used those same stacked hearts that I, made the carving out of, I guess. And then I cut a couple of red hearts and also a couple of white, because I have that white heat embossing. I could have done it in gold, but honestly, I felt like it would be really redundant in order to do that. So I trimmed it out with the banner, and then did the hearts. Like I said, I cut a couple of different ones and then kind of played around with that until I was happy about the way that it looked. Now, you guys know I love the shimmer. I love the sparkle. I've got the metallic going on. That's making me super happy. But I wanted the hearts to have a little something extra. And again, this is where we come back to that experimentation being super important, but also don't give up, because everything is fixable. You've seen all the things just in this card alone that have gone not the way that I intended. And that's all right. We're just persevering because we're learning things. You don't ever learn as much from everything coming out perfect as you do from when things go perfectly wrong. And so it helps you to be a better crafter. So here I am picking up, like I'm gluing my hearts, I'm picking them up. I did work in kind of odd numbers, so your brain wasn't trying to pair them. And then because I have all of this cardstock that's glued down for my carving, I did pop up my my sentiments and my hearts, so that way it wouldn't be weird when I glued it down. So I used the foam circles from Honeybee for the most of it, but in the middle, because it does go right over that cardstock, I didn't need one that was as thick. I needed one that was a little bit thinner. So I did use a different foam piece for that. That's one of the reasons why I recommend having, like 1 or 2 thicknesses, because you never know what you're going to need. And then that top heart in the top left, I just glued that one down right on top of the carved heart, and that was enough to lift it. So here's me with, well, I'm trying to make sure everything is secure. That's what you see me doing there. And the original piece I had underneath that heart was just too big, so I had to get another one. But so then I did want to add, like the shimmery, shiny things without it being kind of like too over the top. And so I pulled out some of, you guys know that I love the Honeybee gemstone mixes. The one that I pulled out, I think, was Fall is in the Air, because it had like a really nice, like kind of bronzy color. And then here's where I made the boo-boo. So I added Stardust stickles to the white hearts, which I was fine with. And then I also added them to the red one, which I was not. So right away, as soon as I did it, I was like, oh man, that's really like, it's pulling purple, and I don't want purple. Purple is not going with my aesthetic. So, also I had a little mishap with the H for anniversary. So I just fixed that with a white gel pen. So here, this is me putting on those bronze, rhinestones. And then this is me going in and scraping off the stickles off of the red ones. Now they've been drying, so there's no way to get it off 100%. But I can get it off enough. And then, so first thing that I tried was I went in with our pigment ink just on my finger and kind of smeared it onto the hearts to give them more of a gold accent, which worked-ish. It worked to add gold, but it didn't completely cover the stickles like I wanted. So then I decided to go in with Simon Hurley's Lunar Paste. And this is the color, hold on, I'll tell you, because it's gold, but it's not called gold. It is, well, now I don't know. Slippery When Wet. There we go. Bon Jovi. So anyway, so I added that in there. I did like that much better. It covered up more of the glitter, but then I couldn't just have that like be the only yellow gold. So I did kind of use my finger to pop it on a little bit of the raised heart, a little bit of the raised letters. And that worked really well. So we had a couple of different metallics. Once that was dry, I did go in with a little bit of a darker alcohol marker and just go over the areas that I wanted to be carved, just to create a little bit of contrast. And so I'm not pushing down. I'm just kind of like raking it over the top of the texture. And then that's it. That's the whole card. So thank you guys for staying with me during science class and experimentation. I hope that you learned some things. I hope that you enjoyed the card. I always appreciate your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.